Hi, my name is Husnara and I'm the Associate Editor at CheekyLittleCareers.com, a new careers, wellbeing and lifestyle website for aspiring to mid-level business professionals, especially those interested in having a career in the city. I'm delighted to be joined for this short video by Sarah Lee, who is now a senior consultant at the very prestigious law firm Slaughter & May, where she spent a very number of years as a successful partner with Slaughters. She's now running a portfolio career, so to speak. I'll get Sarah to say hello, and then I'm sure she'll do a better job explaining what she does. And then we'll spend a bit of time talking about her career as a lawyer in the city and a bit more about the work she's up to at the moment, and of course, just about life in general. Sarah, it's brilliant to see you. It's been so long. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you? You're looking good.
I'm all right, thank you. Thank you very much. So do you. So why don't you start by telling the viewers what you're up to at the moment, because I know that you've got varying roles, some connected to law, some connected to other interests, so fire away.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm still a senior consultant with the firm where I was a partner for 21 years, and I retired from the partnership at the end of last year, remaining as a senior consultant. But it was really so that I could try and do some other things, because certainly towards the end of my career, I'd started doing a couple of other things. I'd become a commissioner of the Judicial Appointments Commission whilst I was still a partner, and I'm continuing to do that. I've just been renewed as a commissioner of the Judicial Appointments Commission for the next 3 years.
Sure.
But alongside that, I've also been appointed as a non-executive director of the Financial Ombudsman Service, so a dispute resolution service, but obviously quite a different type of organisation to the one that I was used to, and not practicing law there, but being a director. And then I'm also a governor at the Cripplegate Foundation, which is a grant-giving foundation which focuses on Islington, which is where Slaughter & May is actually, and also the Cripplegate ward, so around Bunhill Road, which is where Slaughter & May is. Again, that's just not practicing as a lawyer there, very much being involved in the strategy and the decisions about who to make grants to. So really interesting, different roles.
It sounds like you've got a very busy schedule. How do you fit it all in?
I'm not as busy as I was, certainly, when you're in full-time practice and you've got a management role, which I had towards the end of my career, and you're doing something like the Judicial Appointments Commission, I was very, very busy then. So still busy, but not quite as busy. I think I'm one of those people that thrives on having lots going on. I'm very organised. I like to plan. And I like to have a variety of different things. And I think often if you're doing different roles, you can very much draw from one and use the experience and the skills from that to complement what you're doing in another. So all of these experiences, I think, really complement each other.
That really resonates with what I do. Everything I am involved in has a careers related sort of focus. And as you say, one experience gives you sort of knowledge to carry forward with for another opportunity. Let's go back to the beginning. So how did you get into law in the first place?
Okay, so we're going back a very long time now. I was in practice for 30 years.
Wow.
I know, very long time. Well, I started off not wanting to be a lawyer. I started off wanting to be a doctor. And I did science A-levels, which was rather foolish of me, actually, when I look back at my O-levels as they were then. Obviously now GCSEs, because actually sciences were not my strongest subject, but I had got it in my mind that I wanted to be a doctor. So I did science A-levels and didn't do very well at science A-levels, which in retrospect was a really good thing, but at the time felt like a complete and utter disaster. But on the basis of the A-levels, which I had an offer to study psychology at Leeds through clearing, and I could have just gone and done that. But actually I stopped and I paused and I thought, why did I want to be a doctor? What were the things about that career that appealed to me? Yeah. And thought actually being a lawyer is not dissimilar. And I clearly was much stronger at sort of art-based subjects based on my O-levels. So I actually went to Adult Education College for a year and did 2 A-levels in the year. I did English literature and economics. So sort of started again almost effectively, based on my predicted grades of those 2 A-levels, and I thrived on it. I think just those subjects really resonated with me. I applied to study law at Birmingham University. I've got no background in the law at all. I've got no family members, not something which I had any connections with. but was accepted by Birmingham University to study law, and that was the start of the beginning. So not the conventional route in, but actually I often say to students, when I speak to students, you know, sometimes setbacks are a good thing, because they make you step back, think about actually what do you really want, and let you sort of refocus yourself. So blips are not a bad thing.
No, and you've dispelled a myth that so many students probably still have, you know, believe in to this very day, which is that you absolutely need to smash your A-levels first time around, get into Oxbridge to carve a career in the city, and you clearly have not gone down that route. So that's really refreshing to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And how did you end up at Slaughters? Because that, you know, the firm has got a reputation for, you know, striving to be the best. Well, it is one of the best law firms in the city. I say that as an independent, objective observer, but it is a difficult firm to crack, to get into, because it's the standards, well, students expect to have high standards to get in.
I mean, there are high standards to get in. I mean, the quality of the work that Slaughters does is fantastic, and I had a brilliant career there. I didn't start there, so maybe again we can go back a little bit, because I had certain preconceptions about the firm before I joined. But after I left Birmingham, I went to Chester to do my professional exams, and then I moved down to London, and I did my training contract with a firm called Frere Cholmondeley, which eventually merged and became part of Eversheds. I went to Frere Cholmondeley, which was based in Lincoln's Inn Fields in those days, primarily because it had a breadth of different subjects that I could do as part of my training contract. It did commercial work, but it also did some private client work. And at that time, I wasn't yet sure whether I wanted to be working for more individuals rather than for corporates. So the private client department of it really interested me. It was also helped by, I was recruited by this most amazing female partner called Sophie Hamilton, who sadly is no longer with us. But back in those days, female partners were rare, and she was the recruitment partner. And she was totally inspirational when she interviewed me. So I absolutely felt that was the firm for me to join. So I joined there, did my training contract, absolutely fell in love with commercial litigation. So qualified into the commercial litigation group at Frere Cholmondeley. And then after about a year, I had that typical Northerners itchy feet. I'm from Manchester originally. And I thought, I'm going to go back home, I'm going to settle down, buy a big house, have the 2.5 children and the dog, and live this sort of very, very traditional lifestyle. So moved back to Manchester, and actually hadn't realised that I'd got the London bug. And actually all the things which frustrated me about London when I was there, I actually realised stimulated me. So I mean, Manchester, the legal community there has developed hugely since I was there, but the work that I was doing was not quite of the quality of the work that I'd been doing in London. As I say, things have changed dramatically in 30 years, but I was really, I decided quite quickly that I would give it a year, and if I was still not really enjoying it, then I would come back to London. And I was very fortunate. I had a great friend who had been at Birmingham University, who went into legal recruitment. And when I was moving back to London, I phoned him up and said, I want to move back to London, you know, what firms are looking for commercial litigators? And there were a number of firms that were looking at that time, and one of them was Slaughters. And I absolutely didn't think it would be the firm for me, because I had all of these views of it being a very conservative with a small c, but very traditional, and that you had to be from public school, that you had to have gone to Oxbridge, that you had to have had this sort of stellar, straightforward career, a bit as you mentioned earlier on.
That's what I was alluding to, but you've articulated it much better than me.
Yeah, and I didn't fit into that mould, but he persuaded me that they wanted to interview me, and persuaded me I should go for the interview, if nothing else, just to get the experience. So I was interviewed by interviewed by 4 partners in the disputes group there. And they were just amazing people, really inspirational. Again, interviewed by a female partner, Deborah Finkler, who I was in partnership until I retired at the end of the year, and 3 other of the disputes partners there. And they were just really down to earth, you know, really capable people, but just people that I felt I could get on with, and that I could work with, and that would understand me. And, you know, quite frankly, I thought this will look great on my CV. So I will go. I was 2.5 years qualified by then. I'll join and get back to London and kind of see where we go from there. But then actually, you know, just absolutely thrived there. Really fabulous work, you know, really interesting clients. the multi-specialist approach of Slaughter and May really played to my strengths, because I like absorbing information. I've got, and some people call it intellectual curiosity, other people call it nosiness, but I love finding out information. I love asking questions and kind of digging deep, and being able to do that across a range of industries and a range of different types of disputes just really suited me. And I didn't really have any eye on partnership, but at some point I just thought I'll stay here till I'm told to go, really, until somebody discovers me quietly beavering away, but decide I'm not needed. The partners said, have you ever thought about partnership, and really encouraged me to go for it. And I went for it, and I got made a partner and stayed for 21 years. So, it was absolutely not the place which my preconceptions had made me think that it was. It was a very, very welcoming, very, people talk about meritocracies. I genuinely found it to be a meritocracy. During the course of my career, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, I did various other different things. I was the partner in charge of the focus on diversity and inclusion. I was the first partner of the firm to do that. And then I was also the graduate recruitment partner. And I felt it was great testament to the firm that they wanted somebody like me, who perhaps didn't fit the conventional mold, to go out there and to be able to talk to students, to let them understand that, it's not the firm that perhaps you perceive it to be.
We'll come on to that in a moment, because I'm really fascinated to hear more about it, but also really interested to hear a bit more about your journey to partnership, because it's interesting that you joined Slaughters at about 2.5 years PQE. It was about that level when I decided to actually leave law. So what was the trigger for you to think, yeah, you really want this and you want to pursue? Because I think that is quite an important PQE level, when people start potentially having their first wobble like I did, or they feel a bit confused as to whether they should go in-house, stay in private practice, or in my case, leave law altogether. What was going through your mind when that was happening?
I think it is a critical part of your career. And actually, when I've looked back at it, and when I've talked to young lawyers about it, it is an important part of your career. And I think part of the reason why people start to get, I mean, you should be thinking about your career at all different stages, but I think that stage in particular is one where most people do start thinking about what next. And it's partly because we've all had very structured lives before then. We've done GCSEs, we've done A-levels, we've gone to university, we've done the Law Society finals or the conversion course, we've done a training contract, and that's in 6-month sections. And then you qualify, and you do a year of qualification. And then you're sort of thinking, right, well, what next? And you've got this career stretching ahead of you. And particularly when you're doing something like commercial disputes, and it may well be the same in transactional areas, but certainly I think when you're doing commercial disputes, you can be doing some very long running cases. And there's a temptation to just sort of see this stretching ahead of you and not realizing that actually there are real cases come to an end. You move on to the next case, your career changes, you get given more responsibility, you do different things. So I think it's a natural stage to think, but I do think a lot of people opt out at that stage. Opt out's the wrong word, but they make a change at that stage because they don't appreciate actually the way in which a career can develop and change, and you mature and your interests change. So I think it is an important. I think moving at that stage was good for me, because it was that kind of break, and I was then about to start on something new, so there was a new and fresh challenge. But I'm not recommending that you do necessarily move firms at that stage. It was right for me for various reasons, but I think you need to get over just thinking there is this long stretch ahead and it's going to be a grind, because actually when you're living through it, it's not. I mean, the run up to partnership, in retrospect, it's a really interesting phase, because you are being given more responsibility, you're being given more experience. I think, law can be quite daunting as a junior lawyer, because there's a lot that you don't know, and there's a lot that you're getting experience, but you've got no context for it. So again, cases, may have difficult opponents on the other side. You may have a really tricky legal case. You may have difficult clients. And when you're in it, you sort of got no context and ability to see that actually things sort of slot into place after a while. And if you tackle bits in sort of building blocks, then you can normally get through the difficult stages. So I think it was just really having a bit of grit and kind of getting my head down and wanting to prove myself in a new firm, but then being given more responsibility, doing some really, really interesting cases. You know, I was, as a senior associate, I was involved in the collapse of bearings, which was, you know, a really, really interesting case, which, you know, involved going to Singapore, involved interviewing Nick Leeson in prison in Frankfurt, you know, some really stimulating, interesting things. So hard work. And I think the difficult thing about when in the real run up to partnership is that feeling as though you're in the spotlight, and you know, that sort of intense focus on you, and you're being asked to develop develop and demonstrate other skills like business development and, you know, management of people. But actually, that's the bit of the career which I've really enjoyed, is the fact that as you go along, the job changes. You know, you start as a student thinking it's about the cases, and it is always still about the cases and it's about the law, but there are so many other aspects, particularly to being a partner. It's much more entrepreneurial. There's much more you know, sort of personal development and ability to stretch yourself than I think perhaps I had ever appreciated when I was a student. And that's what absolutely has kept me in the career I was in for so long, was because I was doing a whole host of different things, as well as the casework. Loved the casework, but I also loved all the other things that went along with it.
Sure, it sounds really fascinating. So thank you for sharing that. So with your former graduate recruitment partner hat on, what advice would you give to your younger self, or indeed students listening into this video?
I think the advice I would give is, this is going to sound sort of slightly like cliched and like something you see on a greeting card, but I think, you know, I think you need to believe in yourself and have confidence in yourself. I think particularly if you come from a slightly non-traditional background, you can think that everybody knows what's going on, everybody's got it sorted. They know exactly what to do. They're super confident. They've got this flawless record, and that they're just going to, you know, you think everybody else is just going to go through seamlessly. In fact, when you talk to people, you realize most people have had some interesting hiccups along the way. So I think it's believing in yourself and having the confidence and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and taking the opportunities and the experience, but doing it in your style, you know, doing it professionally, but also recognizing you can be yourself. I think so often, and certainly I would have fallen into this trap, is that when you're being interviewed for training contracts, you think that you need to be what they are looking for. You need to understand what they're looking for. You need to describe how you've got the skills and the experience that fit what they're looking for, but you need to be authentic and genuine as to who you are, because then you come across much more in a more engaging way. You talk with a passion and with an interest, which, if you're pretending that you love opera when you've never been to an opera in your life, you know, it shows up pretty quickly. You know, I used to love interviewing people with really interesting hobbies. You know, some people would be quite almost embarrassed about them, but they put them on the CV, and then anything you put on your CV is absolute fair game to be being interviewed about. But I would love interviewing people there was one guy I interviewed who'd actually funded himself through university playing FIFA, because there's some way in which you can play FIFA, the online game, where you can do it competitively and make money. And I was fascinated by that, but he clearly was sort of slightly thinking, oh, I'm going to think that he's just some guy sits in his bedroom on his computer. But it was actually really interesting. And when he started, because he was having to fund himself through university, and this was the way in which he'd used some of his experience and his skills to be able to do that. But when he realized I was genuinely interested, he just sort of blossomed. So I think don't be afraid of who you are, and be confident in expressing and talking about it.
That's really good advice. Thank you for that. And what about things that have made you laugh during your sort of graduate recruitment years?
Am I allowed to say Robert? I'm allowed to say Robert Bike, my graduate recruitment partner. I don't know if you, no, you probably know Robert.
I do know Robert. Yes, I do.
I mean, Robert Bike and I were graduate recruitment partners together, and actually I learned an awful lot from Robert, because Robert is just great fun, and we used to do lots of student events, and I, as a perhaps you might expect as a typical lawyer, would be very organized and very planned, and I would have made all of my notes and would have the slides ready, and Robert would just come in and he would be so natural and engaging. It really helped me, because I didn't used to like public speaking. I still don't really like public speaking, but the more you do, the more you get confident. Yeah. And actually doing something with Robert, who could do something completely out of the blue, and apologies, Robert, if you're ever watching this, but you know, Robert would sometimes just lie on the floor whilst I was doing a presentation because his back was hurting. He wouldn't mind that there was a room full of students, but of course it broke the ice, and they found that they found that engaging and unexpected, you know, of a partner of slaughter maid. But it was Robert being genuinely himself and not being afraid to be himself. And I think I found that. But yes, Robert used to make me laugh.
And again, authenticity has come up, you know, it's so important, being yourself and not trying to fake it, because I think ultimately you get caught out and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about diversity now, because that's obviously your other sort of pet topic. I'm a female, was a lawyer, you're a female, you had a very successful legal career. How was that? Because it's very topical, and I think that there are still lots of issues that need addressing, but it'd be interesting to hear how you sort of managed being a female solicitor in the city and became a partner eventually.
I mean, when I started out, there were certainly far fewer females in the legal profession, particularly in the senior roles. And those, you know, the two I've mentioned today, you know, did stand out. And it wasn't unusual then to be the only woman in the room. Yeah. Undoubtedly, I think that certainly then you had to prove yourself, you know, harder than perhaps other people. I'm not sure though whether the challenges, and you know, there's a lot of focus nowadays in the diversity space on intersectionality. I'm not sure whether the challenges I faced were because I was a woman or because I'm an ethnic minority. I'm half Chinese. I think people were slightly fascinated by me. They couldn't quite place me. I used to get that "where are you from?" No, "where are you really from?" question all the time. I'm also very small. You can't see that on this recording, but I'm teeny tiny. I'm 4'11", and I think I used to walk into rooms, and particularly as a litigator, you could undoubtedly see clients thinking, I wanted the Rottweiler litigator, and you bring me this short female Chinese lawyer. How is she going to beat up the other side? But I think you have to be able to command confidence. You have to be able to show that you can do the job very well. You've got to not be afraid of demonstrating that, and to maybe just push yourself a bit more than perhaps naturally comes to you. Yeah. So I think there were undoubtedly challenges along the way, but I think the more that you do it, the more confidence that you get, the more actually you realize that your differences are an asset, not a detriment. You know, people remember you, you stick in people's mind. Being disarming was a great weapon I found as a litigator. You know, the other side I think would often underestimate me, and then I would, you know, absolutely take them out because they just assumed that they could shout over me. You know, and I absolutely am not a pushover. So I think sometimes you can use your differences to your advantage. So not being afraid of them and embracing them and using them, I think is what I would say. But undoubtedly there are challenges along the way, and we have, you know, we are still making slow progress. I think we're getting a lot better. I think there's a recognition that time will not just sort itself out. I think when I started out, everybody just assumed the fact that there were sufficient numbers of women coming into the profession that eventually it would reflect itself in the partnership numbers. That's not worked. So I think, you know, thinking about things like flexible working, about empowering the men to also realize that they can be parents, and they can be openly parents, and they can take shared parental leave, and they can say, I want to pick up my children from school, actually helps all of those who are employed, you know, have a home and a work life. So I think that there's a lot that's going on, which I'm hoping will increase the pace of change.
Great. Before we run out of time, I wanted to talk to you about what you're up to now in a bit more detail. So what does your typical day involve, and how did you get involved in all the stuff that you're doing?
Well, the Judicial Appointments Commission, as I said, I took that on when I was still at the firm, and it was something which had always interested me. Inevitably, as a litigator and as a senior female lawyer, there are times when people say, have you ever thought about being a judge? And I often have to say, no, it doesn't really appeal to me, but I would like to be the person that appoints the judges, because I was, with my recruitment hat on, I was very interested in how do you identify talent, and how do you attract it, and how do you retain it. the role for the Judicial Appointment Commission came up, and it doesn't come up very often, because there are certain, the commission has to be made up of a certain number of people, and there are some professional members, and there's judicial members, and there's lay members, and I'm appointed as a solicitor representative. And it came up just as I'd taken on being head of the disputes group, so the timing wasn't great, but I knew if I didn't apply then, it would take another 6 years. Anyway, I applied for it, and I was fortunate enough to get it, and that's been fascinating, because working with people who've had very senior careers outside the law, so a number of lay members, working with members of the judiciary, really looking at how do we make sure that our selection exercises are as fair as possible. There is a focus on diversity in the judiciary, so again, that's an area I'm very interested in. So that's been fascinating. And then the Financial Ombudsman Service is something that I took on as I retired. And my reason for doing that was I having sat on the board at Slaughter and May, I was very interested in kind of strategic leadership and how one can influence an organisation at the board level. And the Financial Ombudsman Service, obviously a really important service in terms of resolving disputes between consumers and financial institutions. And so it was in an area which I knew, but a very different type of organisation. So really enjoying that as well.
Fantastic. So what does the future hold for you, Sarah?
Oh, more of the same, I think. Obviously I'm bedding down into the new role, and I'm really enjoying it. I would love to be able to do some travel, but that's been thwarted. I was meant to be going off to Sri Lanka at the beginning of the year, post my immediate retirement, to have 3 weeks sort of doing yoga and contemplating my navel and resetting myself, and I wasn't able to do that. But yeah, travel at some point is what I would like to do more of.
Well, let's hope that we can all do a bit more of that sometime soon. Sarah, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but absolutely fantastic listening to your story. Really, you've blown me away, because I've known you for so many years and I've learned new things about you. So thank you for being so open and candid and sharing your sort of story with me and indeed the audience. And hopefully we will see each other again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.